Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. Because Halloween is right around the corner, I'm populating my channel with some spooky videos, and today I want to introduce you to some real nightmare fuel. This is a grabber slasher, an old Rogue Trader era 40k miniature that you can use to bolster your Tyranid forces in Advanced Space Crusade. From their design, you should be able to determine why they might be called grabber slashers. However, if you're looking for some of these fellas on eBay, you might need to search under a few different terms. Back in the day, they were packaged in blisters with other unusual critters and labelled Tyranid Squigs, so that's often how people refer to them now. I've also seen them called Ripper Squigs. I think these are some of the weirdest, nastiest miniatures Games Workshop has ever made, and they are also incredibly rare. In the last couple of months, I've only seen 3 pop up on eBay. For a long time, there was only 1 available, and it was £40. In fact, these things are so expensive I wouldn't have any in my collection at all if it wasn't for the kindness of subscriber John Middleton. He sent me 4 grabber slashers as a gift, but, whisper it, these aren't genuine Games Workshop miniatures. I think you would be hard pressed to tell, but these are recasts. To reiterate my stance on recasts, I do not condone recasting current readily available miniatures and selling for profit. However, these were a gift, and they're recasts of miniatures that are over 30 years old that Games Workshop don't make anymore and honestly never will make again. John gifting me these recasts hasn't taken a penny out of Games Workshop's pocket, it's just saved me spending far too much money with resellers. In reality, this was probably the only way I was ever going to own them. Anyway, I'm so excited to have these, and I think they're so cool, I just had to do a video on them and paint them up, even though I'm not starting on my Advanced Space Crusade painting project for a little while. I'm going to paint these in a really unusual way, which may not be to everybody's tastes. It just seems the most fitting approach for miniatures that are so weird. But first, I'm going to show you how I made the textured Hive ship bases. This isn't a new trick, and I didn't come up with it myself, but it's pretty neat, and you can get some really interesting results. For this example, I'm just going to use a Renedra round base, and I have got some very cheap PVA glue, white glue here, and I'm going to squirt a dollop of that onto the middle of the base, and then I'm just going to use a Games Workshop texture tool to smooth that out. You don't have to use a Games Workshop texture tool, you can use anything you like. An old brush is fine, and you just want to make sure you push it all the way out to the edges of the base, and you want to have a decent coating of it over the whole thing. It doesn't have to be perfectly even, it just has to be a decent amount, and you may want to experiment a few times with this to determine exactly how much PVA glue you want to use, because if you don't use enough or you use too much, you get slightly different results with this process. Regardless, once you've got it all leveled out, you are going to need some super glue. I am using Loctite super glue with a precision applicator. Again, you may want to experiment with different types of super glue to see which gives the best results. And I am just squirting a decent amount of super glue onto the base, and what will start to happen almost instantly is the super glue will react with the PVA glue, and it will start to draw the moisture, and you start to see almost instantly some very unusual shapes starting to form in the PVA glue. And this will take ages to dry, but you can see very quickly you start to get these sort of craters forming that also have these little squiggly lines inside them. This is after just a couple of minutes, and you can see those patterns starting to form in the glue. So now I'm just going to leave that there to set, and you will probably want to leave these overnight so that they're completely dry, but this is 20 minutes later. You can see we're getting some good formations of patterns there, some quite deep ridges, some interesting shapes, and again we're getting those squiggly vein-like designs inside. And it may not look fantastic at the moment, but once you start putting some paint on that, it can look pretty good and you can get some different effects with it. But that's all there is to it. Once you've got these completely dry, you can mount your miniatures up and then we can start painting. And that's exactly what I'm going to do now with my grabber slasher. I have started by spray undercoating it with necrotic flesh from Army Painter, which is just a nice putrid green flesh colour to start with. And then I'm going to get some Reikland flesh shade, and I'm going to apply this liberally over the whole miniature. This is going to provide some recess shading, it's going to make all those weird details pop, and it's also going to make the skin look a little bit fleshier. But we're going to be using a lot of washes on this miniature, and the aim is to try and make it look like this horrendously artificially grown construct, tumours growing out of tumours, different types of flesh patched together. So I'm switching to blue tone now, and I'm going to apply this over any obvious veins. So any veins that we can see, but also any tube-like protrusions, and also occasional just little blobs on the skin surface as well. We are trying to create an odd patchwork of different colours. Part of it is to make it look like it's a part of the Hive ship itself. If you've ever seen the boards for Advanced Space Crusade, they are very, very bright, lots of weird greens and purples and reds, and I want this grabber slasher to look like it's a weird thing that could be hiding in the wall and could suddenly jump out at the Marines as they are exploring. I'm now switching to red tone, and I'm going to apply the red tone to any obvious bulges, anything that looks like a horrible tumorous growth. So all of the bulbous areas, that's mainly around where those blue veins are really. These really are quite gross miniatures. And you'll see that I am not using a really big wash brush, I'm just using a Citadel layer brush, so I've got a little bit of control over what I'm doing. I don't want this wash just to go all over the place, I want to be a little bit controlled in what I'm doing. Next is green, and this time we're going to apply it in little patchy areas around the tail and all down that spine on the back. Anywhere where I think the flesh would be pulled quite tightly over bony protrusions and any kind of skeletal insides to this monstrous thing. So really this is where the skin is at its thinnest. But really, there's no rhyme or reason to how you go about doing something like this. It's all about eyeballing it really and thinking, okay, I like the look of that, or this doesn't look quite right, or this needs an extra splodge here. Next is Seraphim Sepia, and I'm going to put this all over the face to bring out the details on the face, and then I'm just going to apply it wherever I think we need an extra splodge of a yellowy brown. So we're going to put it on the legs, we're also going to put some of it on the fingers, on that hand on the top. But again, really it's all about judging it by eye and just deciding whether you like the look of what you're doing. And as before, I'm still using that small brush, I'm still trying to keep it a little bit controlled. I don't want to keep going over the washes I've already done, and I don't want to make it look really messy. Next up is Cassandora Yellow, and this is mainly going to go on those grabbing fingers at the top, but again, anywhere where I think we need a little splash of a brighter colour, anywhere where I feel like I've missed a spot, just to keep building up those different weird colours. As I said, if you've seen the boards for Advanced Space Crusade, they are incredibly bright, and I want this to feel like it's hiding somewhere in that maze of passageways. With the washes all done, we're going to move on to doing the claws and the teeth and the fingers, and that's just going to be done with Army Painter Skeleton Bone. And then when that's dry, we're going to switch to Agrax Earthshade, because I've got to put Agrax Earthshade in somewhere, and I'm just going to apply this around the bases of all of the fingernails and all of the spines, and then I'm also going to put it in the mouth as well to help define those nasty gnashing teeth. And this will tone down the brightness of the skeleton bone and make it look a little bit more natural. Next I need to dot in the eyes, so for that I'm using Abaddon Black, and I'm going to thin this down a little bit so I've got a bit of control over it. I'm going to brace the miniature, hold my breath and just dot in those eyeballs. And then I'm going to get some thinned down pallid witch flesh, and I'm just going to dot in a little glint of white, so that these will look like really horrible staring eyes in this ghastly face. And that is actually a finished job in terms of painting the grabber slasher itself. So now we need to think about painting this base. And again, I want this base to look like it is part of those garish, bright Advanced Space Crusade boards. So while you could just paint the base so it looks like a fleshy green mass, I'm going to be starting with some Evil Sun Scarlet, and I'm going to paint this into all of the insides of those craters. What I want to do here is I want to give the impression that we have these weird undulating, pulsating valves in the ground, which are opening and closing, and when they're opening, they're revealing these horrible red tubular internal mechanisms of the ship. Something to make you feel a little bit squeamish as you are walking around. So I'm just going to put this into every single crater. And then when that's completely dry, I'm going to get some Reikland Flesh Shade, and I'm just going to splosh a bit of that into each of those craters as well. That's going to tone down that red a little bit so it's not quite so bright. It's also going to make it look a little bit more fleshy and a little bit more organic. And then I'm switching to Goblin Green, and I'm going to paint all around the outsides of those craters and the exposed bit of the base. So really, what you have to imagine is the ground is green and it's quite a bright, garish, sickly green, and then suddenly these valves are opening up and breathing or passing gas around the ship. It's quite an unpleasant thought. I'm going to put some Athonian Camo Shade over that green next, just to help bring out the definition, tone down the green ever so slightly, and just provide an extra bit of texture and some variation in the coloration. But obviously I don't want that to go all inside of those red areas. And then I'm switching to Alien Purple, and there are those little veins inside the craters, those little sinewy parts that have been created by the way that that PVA and superglue interacted with each other, and I'm just going to line those in with that purple. And then just a little wash of blue tone over those purple veins, just to finish them off. And then once that's done, it's pretty much finished. I'm just going to apply Abaddon Black around the base for the finishing touch. And here it is. This is my grabber slasher. And as I said at the top of the video, I think this is a painting style which is not going to be for everybody. I think some people are going to look at this and think it looks terrible, but I am really pleased with how this has turned out. I think it's a very fitting look for the Tyranid Hive ships, and I think it does look like a suitably disgusting bio-construct that the Tyranids have come up with. A ghastly, nightmarish creature that the Space Marines are not going to be expecting. So overall, yes, I am happy with how this has turned out. And here is a close-up of that base so you can see all those gooey, sinewy insides. But that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.